I'm so glad to be here. I have to confess, I love Germany. That was my first working experience back in 2000. And that was in Böblingen near Stuttgart. Very good memories. Today we are going to talk about Bosh, working hand in hand with SystemD. A story about authoring a Bosh release. Yeah, for those who have missed it, I've done a nice talk back in May in New York about authoring a Bosh release. The point was, it's easy, like we've seen with Gandon. Well, and what I have to say, I have seen the Daniel Garnier presentation in KubeCon Paris. It was so great. You must go there and see that. And those terminal-based slides, I cannot do this. It's fantastic and so cool. Anyway, I'm Benjamin Gandon, and all the work I do on Bosh is now under the umbrella of Gstack, the Gstack collective. And it has no more websites because I'm not doing any business anymore with Gstacks, but it has a GitHub account. Yeah, right. Let's go. So it's a story about authoring a Bosh release. A Bosh release for deploying what? It's for deploying Kubernetes. like we know we need to build some Carvel stuff and deploy that. Oh, Kubernetes. So what's behind the story is going to be on this agenda. How Bosh can work hand in hand with SystemD, and that's pretty tricky, but we are going to explain that in details. And why the pattern is interesting for the upcoming changes in Bosh. Upcoming changes, but oh my God, Monet is going to base files out. Oh my God. And why Kubernetes? Yeah, I'm now working in a Kubernetes company doing Kubernetes all over the place. Do you want some Kubernetes in your Kubernetes? Yeah, I want some Kubernetes on top of my Kubernetes with some Kubernetes inside. Everything Kubernetes nowadays. But I have to confess, I'm a bit fed up with complex Kubernetes native deployment systems. I mean, I know Kubernetes in the first place. I've been teaching Kubernetes. But once you dig into cluster API, you enter in a complete new world. Do I have? Yeah, I have sound. And it's so complex. It basically re-implements Bosh, but it's eventually consisting. When is it eventually converging? It fails quite often, and it's narrowed at deploying what only Kubernetes, whereas Bosh can deploy anything. So I wanted to demonstrate that deploying Kubernetes with Bosh is it's just elegant. I mean, once you finish, it's done and it's working. You don't have to wait or restart some controllers because it has stuck in the middle, you don't know why. So the story about deploying Kubernetes with Bosh is there were two attempts before. The very famous CFCR release, alias Kubo for Kubernetes and Bosh. But it has stopped in 2021 at version 1.17. And the Kate's Bosh release, it's a nice one by James Hunt. But it has stopped the year later at version 1.19. So, well, they both re-implement the standard kube ADM way of deploying Kubernetes, with a bit of difference. CFCR release uses Docker as a runtime, and Kate's Bosh release uses containerd. Oh, containerd, that's nice, because it's widely adopted and it's the right choice moving forward. So, I've just forked Kate's Bosh release and starting upgrading that. You can see the result on my GitHub account there. Well, the Gstack IO collective GitHub account, actually. So I've bumped it to the latest 119, and I've bumped it to the latest 120. There is still quite a journey until 131, the latest one. But doing that, I faced a very precise problem. Suddenly, in version 120, I was bumping the API server, and it was requiring new arguments to run. And I needed to provide it some value. I just look at the documentation, no indication of the right choice for the value to give it to that. So the question was, where can I find an example of that? To run it properly, I mean, and bump it right, so that when upgrading the Bosh release, Kubernetes still works. And overall, more globally, more generally, what's the right way of deploying Kubernetes? So, the answer is using kubedeum, of course. It is because it's a kind of standard way of deploying Kubernetes. But do you see me running it manually? No way. Do you see me running an Ansible playbook for doing that? No way. I mean, so many corporates are doing that. I do respect that, but it's such a pain. I mean, I can provide free hugs at the exit of this conference for people experiencing that pain. Or I can write my own Bosh release for kubedeum. And after all, I've done much more complex with GitLab, and I've said it easy back in May, so yeah, let's go. First problem, running containerd. Let's dig into that. So, well, it's also related to something I said in May. Yeah, you can see that on my on this YouTube channel, excellent YouTube channel. In 2024, you must use BPM, the Bosh Process Manager. And when you see CFCR release, it doesn't use BPM. When you see Kate's Bosh release, it doesn't use BPM either. So I'm quite sad. And the reason is because of C groups. So what's the problem with C groups? On SystemD managed systems, well, C groups just literally belongs to SystemD. It owns them and it says, oh, you don't mess with my C groups. If you mess with me, I'm gonna mess with you. So, and BPM would love to play well with SystemD. But SystemD, it's not the way it works. It cannot delegate management just being asked for unless BPM is run by SystemD, and in its unit file you get the delegate yes stanza. So there is something in the Cloud Foundry community running containerd. So yeah, wait, Gandon hasn't Gandon solved that problem yet? And looking at the code, it's a bit more than that. Actually, Gandon literally includes containerd source code. Nowadays, it's building it aside, but it did include it at some point. I'm pretty sure I've seen that in the source code, but yeah. So Gandon has a BPM mode, but it defaults to false. It's disabled by default in the Bosh release. Doesn't mean it. Maybe it's enabled in Cloud Foundry deployment. We've seen that before on the Bosh release of Bosh, I mean. But good Lord, no. It's not enabled in safe deployment. So actually, this BPM mode is not used by Gandon. It's just there for cases where you don't run systemd, and that's the case when running Bosh Lite, for example. Because there is systemd on all stem cells except on the Bosh Lite stem cell. So anyway, I started looking for my own solution. So there's the idea. On a Bosh managed instance, you get run it in the first place. That runs Monit and Bosh agent triggers Monit to execute BPM-based processes. But usually they run a binary, but there you cannot run directly containerd because it's going to conflict with the systemd C groups management, so it's going to fail. Because of systemd, we need some different approach. Systemd watches a unit file where we put the delegate yes stanza, and this manages containerd, how this can fit together. So the idea is that BPM, when it starts, it says to the unit file, you need to start. And whenever containerd would fail, it says back to BPM somehow, you need to stop. So BPM needs a process to run. But it's kind of process that won't do anything. Just start a unit file and then wait. That's precisely what the post process do in Kubernetes. So it's a very interesting source of inspiration. And there's always a Bash one-liner for that. I mean, so this one. So it's a crow process read that blocks on an empty FIFO that stays empty anytime. Well, I don't run into the details. It's explained there, but it works. And the return path. I mean, on the way forward, when Bosh stops the instance, BPM sends a term signal to our post process, and we forward that as a stop on the containerd service. But on the return path, would containerd fail, our post process should receive a different signal to do something else. So we've chosen something quite obvious, the interrupt signal. And so we need something to send that interrupt signal back to our post process. And that's where I've come up with a fail wrapper. I mean, I wanted to use the exec post stop in SystemD so that whenever containerd fails or stops, something is executed to trigger this interrupt signal back to post process. But that one was never executed. I don't know why. I couldn't find one. Anyway, so the fallback solution was to use the onFailer standard, triggering a different unit file. So I needed to trigger it any time, whenever containerd would stop unexpectedly, but not without any error, or whenever it would fail, actually. So just let's have systemd fail always. That was the idea. So this one is just forwarding terminal signal whenever systemd says to containerd to stop. It waits for containerd and exits with 255 error code anytime. So now we need to forward that to our post process. And that's where there is a second part of that fail wrapper called a BPM shim. And this onFailer triggers a notify Bosh unit file that is templated. The template is just the name of the triggering unit file. It's just the way systemd names things. It's not right. It's not that big a big deal. And in there, we grab the post process ID and we interrupt it. So we grab the process ID here. We say we are going to interrupt the post process, and we do interrupt it. So yeah, the final solution design is you have the BPM part there, you have the containerd part, and there is a new post process in between, and the fail wrapper and BPM shim. What happens? Whenever it starts on the way forward, BPM starts the post process that starts the unit file, and on the whenever BPM stops, it says the post process stops and stops the unit file. Whenever containerd fails, then it triggers an error on BPM shim and interrupts the post process that stops running, and Monit see that and is able to restart if it's the required behavior. So that's it, and it's working. So no demo here today. I'm running out of time, actually. And as a conclusion, for the future, it's a very interesting pattern. Because in novel stem cell, systemd shall be available as an alternative to Monit. Actually, we are not phasing out Monit yet. We just aim at providing an alternative that would be based on systemd. We have so many Bosh releases relying on Monit. We are not ready to transition smoothly yet. So you can look at this issue about an alternative to Monit, and more generally this RFC on novel stem cells, tracking all the work on that. It's very nice. And so the pattern we've seen today may be used to prepare that transition. And remember, systemd is not available on Bosh Lite, and Bosh Lite is fine. I'm running it in production. Don't say that to anyone. And as an announce, finally, I'm going to open source 2 Bosh release. And one will be the GitLab Bosh release to deploy very nice GitLab clusters with Bosh. It hasn't been done before. And another one is going to be this QBIDM Bosh release. You can find the working source code of everything I've told you about today. Soon to be announced on CFDev. I have some work yet to be done before open sourcing that. And contributors are welcome. Thank you.